It began on a night when the world seemed to pause between one breath and the next, when even the wind forgot to move. The forest edge shimmered faintly beneath the waning moon, and there, where no path had ever led, something impossible began to take form. The air thickened like molten glass, and from the mist, a door emerged, ancient, silent, and shimmering with a faint silver pulse, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. She stood before it, trembling not from fear but from the aching pull of curiosity, that fragile spark that whispers, "What if?" The world around her was ordinary no longer. Even the shadows leaned closer, listening. The night waited for her choice, and somewhere deep within the whispering leaves, a voice, soft as breath, murmured, "Open me." By dawn the door was gone. Only dew and silence marked where it had stood, as though the forest itself had swallowed the memory. Yet the image refused to fade from her mind. The silver veins, the faint hum that seemed to echo in her chest long after she left. The village stirred with morning light, smoke curling from chimneys, roosters calling into the mist, but all felt oddly distant, unreal. She tried to tell herself it was a dream, that no door could simply appear and vanish with the night. But when she looked down at her hand, faint lines of silver shimmered across her skin like threads of moonlight, proof that some dreams do not end with waking. Whispers began to follow her. At first, they were only in dreams, voices calling from beyond a veil of fog, urging her to return. Then they came with the wind, curling through branches, whispering her name in the hush of twilight. The door had not left. It was waiting. Each night she felt it drawing nearer, its rhythm echoing her heartbeat. She walked the edge of the forest often, pretending not to look for it, though her steps always led to the same place. She wondered what it wanted, or whether it was she who wanted something the world of morning light could never give. Lyora found her there one evening, standing before the forest again, her eyes distant and her hand faintly glowing beneath her cloak. Fear passed between them like a shadow. Lyora spoke of old tales their mother used to whisper, stories of a door that calls the lonely, the restless, the ones who cannot be content. She begged her sister to forget it, to stay within the safety of the world that wakes with the sun. But Ilara's silence was an answer of its own. The forest seemed to listen, holding its breath as twilight deepened into something darker. That night, she awoke to silence so absolute, it seemed the world had stopped breathing. The air was colder than before, heavy with anticipation. She rose and stepped to the window. Through the haze of moonlight and mist, she saw it again. The door, gleaming faintly at the edge of the forest, as if it had been waiting all along. Its light pulsed softly, like a heartbeat answering her own. She felt the familiar pull in her chest, irresistible and terrifying. Without a word, she reached for her cloak. The night opened around her like a held breath, and the forest whispered, "Come." The forest was a cathedral of silence when she stepped beneath its boughs. Moonlight fractured through the mist, casting pale veins of silver across the roots and stones. The door awaited, unchanged, eternal, humming softly like a living pulse. Yet this time something else stirred near it, a flicker of movement that was not wind. The air thickened with the weight of presence, and for the first time fear began to bloom in her chest, cold and certain. From behind the door, a whisper spoke her name, not in voice, but in memory, as though her own thoughts had turned against her. Then a shape emerged, half shadow, half light, eyes like molten glass, robes rippling though no breeze touched them. The keeper had come. The keeper did not speak at first. His presence was a stillness that consumed every sound, every breath. When at last his voice came, it was neither gentle nor cruel. A resonance that seemed to echo through the marrow of the earth. He told her the door was not meant for mortals, that each who opened it surrendered more than life could repay. His words were warnings shaped like riddles, but she heard something deeper beneath them: sorrow. As he turned his gaze upon her, she felt not only fear, but recognition, as though she had stood before him once before in some forgotten dream. He spoke of others who had seen the door: dreamers, wanderers, the desperate and the lost. Each was drawn by longing, and each paid a price too great to name. "The door shows not what is beyond," he said, "but what you most desire. And desire, child, is a labyrinth that devours itself." She wanted to turn away, to forget, but the words sank deep into her heart, glowing with terrible truth. Still, when he asked if she would return home, her silence betrayed her. He looked at her then, not with anger but with pity, and the door's pulse brightened, casting them both in light that felt like judgment. She asked him why the door appeared to her and not to others. The keeper's expression wavered, as though the answer carried its own wound. "Because you looked for it," he said simply. "And once it finds those who seek, it cannot let them go." His words trembled in the air like frost. She wanted to ask more, but already his form was fading, dissolving into threads of shadow and mist. The door dimmed. The forest fell still again, and she was left alone beneath a sky full of watching stars. The silence that followed was worse than any sound, a silence that promised the story was far from done. She returned home before dawn, her cloak soaked with dew and silence. The world of morning felt small, almost fragile compared to what she had seen. Yet the door lingered behind her eyes, glowing each time she blinked. Lyora noticed the change: the hollow quiet, the restless glances toward the forest. She asked, begged, demanded to know what haunted her sister's nights. But how could Ilara explain a thing that lived between worlds, that spoke in dreams and silence? She only said, "It's real," and somewhere, far off, a sound like distant thunder rolled through the dawn. Sleep no longer brought rest. The dreams came each night, silver and alive. Reflections of things she had never seen, but somehow remembered. Meadows made of starlight, rivers that sang, faces she almost knew. The door called to her through these visions, whispering promises wrapped in warmth and wonder. Each time she awoke, the longing grew sharper, like a song she could almost hear but never finish. She began to wander the forest by moonlight again, drawn by a pull she could neither fight nor explain. The keeper's warning echoed faintly in her memory, yet desire is its own kind of blindness, and hers had already taken root. By the third night, the door came earlier. Not at midnight, but just after dusk. Its glow spilled between the trees like water, rippling in time with her pulse. When she approached, the runes shifted again, rearranging to form shapes she could almost read. Her reflection appeared in its surface, but not as she was. The girl staring back was radiant, calm, unafraid, eyes full of peace. She reached out, fingers trembling, and the reflection moved first, smiling. For one heartbeat, she believed she could step through and find herself whole again. The days that followed felt hollow, like the world had lost its color. She stopped speaking of the door, though it pulsed in her thoughts with every heartbeat. Her chores went unfinished, her food remained untouched. Lyora's voice became distant, as though spoken from behind glass. When night fell, she could feel the pull again, the same rhythm that had lived in her dreams since the first midnight. The keeper's voice, once warning, now whispered like an invitation. She told herself she would only look, only once more. But in the quiet hours, desire has its own will. On the fourth night, she did not resist. The forest welcomed her like an old friend, every branch, every shadow, leaning closer as she passed. The door stood waiting, brighter than before, its light flickering with a heartbeat that matched her own. She could feel warmth radiating from it, hear the faint hum of unseen voices. When she laid her palm against the surface, it pulsed in answer. Alive, breathing, The silver lines on her hand flared to brilliance, and the world tilted, as though gravity itself leaned toward the unknown. When she finally drew her hand away, her fingers still glowed faintly, and the air around her shimmered like heat on stone. She could feel something inside her, a thread, invisible but unbreakable, now binding her to the door. That night she dreamed not of the forest, but of another world beyond it. Skies that burned with aurora light, oceans made of glass, a horizon where time stood still. And though she woke trembling, one truth remained: she would open the door. Not for glory, not for escape, but because it was the only way to quiet the ache that had begun to consume her soul. Midnight came with a hush so deep it felt sacred. The stars watched without blinking, and the wind held its breath as she stepped once more into the forest. Her steps were silent on the moss, her cloak trailing behind like the tail of a shadow. The door stood waiting, its glow no longer cold, but warm, beckoning. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, and the air trembled with an unseen music, low, resonant, and ancient. She thought of her sister, of warnings whispered in tears, but the pull was stronger than love or fear. She reached for the handle. The metal was warm. The world bent around her, the forest dimmed, and the hum became a voice, not calling her name now, but welcoming her home. The door opened not with a sound, but with silence, the kind that swallows everything. Light poured forth like liquid silver, spilling over her skin, filling her lungs, drowning the world she knew. For a heartbeat she felt herself dissolve, no longer body or breath, but thought and memory stretching across eternity. Then she stepped through, and the ground beneath her was gone. There was no forest, no sky, only a vast expanse of light that pulsed like the inside of a heartbeat. And in that impossible brightness, voices rose. The same whispers that had haunted her dreams, now clear and close. Welcome home, seeker of shadows. When the light faded, she stood in a place that defied comprehension. The ground shimmered like water, yet held her weight. The sky above was an ocean turned upside down, its waves made of light. Floating islands drifted through the air, trees of glass growing from their surfaces, their branches heavy with luminous fruit. The air hummed with a melody that felt like memory itself. She touched her chest. Her heartbeat was still there, but faint, echoing strangely as if far away. Every part of this realm seemed alive, watching, remembering. And beneath it all, the feeling of being known, deeply, unbearably known. The whispering ones found her there. At first, they were only voices in the wind, soothing, tender, weaving promises of rest and understanding. Then they took form. Translucent figures made of smoke and starlight, faces familiar yet forgotten. They spoke not aloud, but within her mind, each word a thread tugging her deeper into their world. You belong here, they whispered. You are one of us now. She wanted to believe them, to surrender to the serenity that dripped from their every word. But somewhere inside, beneath the wonder, a tremor of dread began to stir. One among the whispering ones stepped closer, its form shifting into a shape she recognized, herself, older, radiant, at peace. Stay, it murmured. There is nothing left to fear here. For a moment, Ilara almost reached for the illusion. The air shimmered around them. The light trembled like the edge of a waking dream. Then she heard another sound, faint, distant, real. The voice of her sister calling her name through the veil. It tore through the silence like thunder, scattering the illusion. The vision of her older self faltered, eyes flickering with sorrow before vanishing into mist. And as the light dimmed, the keeper's voice returned. Every crossing demands a price. The light faded into quiet twilight, and she found herself standing upon a bridge of glass that stretched endlessly into a horizon of shadows. The air was still, the hum of the whispering ones silenced. Then he appeared, the keeper, cloaked once more in black silk that absorbed the realm's glow. He looked at her, not with judgment, but with sorrow, as though every choice she made was one he had once made before. "You've seen it now," he said softly. "The beauty that feeds, the wonder that devours." His voice carried the weight of ages. This place was born from longing. Every door that ever tempted a heart became part of it. You opened it not because you were chosen, but because you chose. He told her of the first door, forged by those who wished to escape pain, fear, death. They built a world of perfection, but it consumed them, feeding on their desires until nothing remained but echoes. Every century, another heart strong enough to dream too deeply was drawn here, to feed the realm anew. "You are not trapped," he said. "Not yet. But each moment you stay, it will take a little more of you." His gaze softened. "And when it has your memory, it will wear your face for the next who dares to open the door." She asked him why he stayed, why he hadn't escaped if he knew the truth. His eyes lifted, catching the pale shimmer of the horizon. "Once I was as you are," he said quietly. "I sought the world beyond pain, beyond loss. The door gave me eternity, but it took my name. Now I am its memory, its warning." His hand brushed the air, and faint silver dust fell from his fingertips, dissolving before it touched the ground. "I cannot leave, but you still can, if you have the courage to remember what you came from." His words trembled like light on water. He led her through the shifting paths of the realm, showing her what it held. Illusions spun from memory. She saw her mother alive again, her laughter echoing through fields of gold. She saw a world without sorrow, without endings. Each vision burned brighter, calling her to stay, but behind every beauty she saw the hollow eyes of the lost, those who had once reached out and never returned. The keeper's voice guided her through the maze of dreams. "This place is not evil," he said. "It only reflects what you crave. To escape it, you must choose what you would live without." At last they came to the end of the light, a vast mirror standing where the horizon broke. In its surface she saw not her reflection, but her life, every joy, every sorrow, every moment she wished undone. The keeper stood beside her, silent. "To leave," he said finally, "you must choose one thing you will never reclaim. The door opens only to loss." Her hands trembled. In the mirror, she saw her sister's face waiting by the forest edge, eyes full of hope. Tears welled as she understood what was being asked. The truth was cruel. To return meant to forget. To stay meant to fade. The realm waited for her choice. The mirror waited, its surface alive with shifting light, showing her everything she was, every moment she had loved, feared, or fled. The keeper stood beside her, unmoving, as if carved from the silence itself. Her reflection trembled, and with it, her resolve. Somewhere beyond the veil, she could almost hear her sister's voice calling through the waking world, faint and desperate. The keeper's eyes softened with pity. "Every return demands a sacrifice," he whispered. "You must leave something behind. Not a trinket, but truth." Her breath shook. She understood then that to go home, she would have to surrender the one memory that defined her. The memory of why she ever came here at all. She closed her eyes and tried to choose. The mirror responded, its surface blooming with images. Her sister's laughter, the scent of rain on the cottage roof, the first time she'd seen the door shimmer in the mist, each one a thread in the tapestry of her soul. To let go of any felt like tearing her own name apart. But through the anguish, one memory called louder than the rest. The moment she first heard the whisper, "Open me." It was the beginning of everything, and she knew now that to silence it was to live free. Her lips trembled as she whispered back, "I choose to forget the call." The realm shuddered. A wind rose from nowhere, carrying the echoes of countless voices. The mirror cracked, light spilling from its fractures like molten silver. The keeper stepped back, his robes flaring in the invisible storm. "It is done," he said, his voice trembling with awe and grief. "The door will close, but not without cost." Ilara's heartbeat thundered in her ears. The light that poured from the mirror surrounded her, wrapping her in warmth and sorrow. She could feel her memories unraveling, the door's song fading from her mind, and with it, her reason, forever stepping beyond. As the storm subsided, she stood amidst the ruins of the mirror, shards glimmering like fallen stars beneath her feet. The keeper approached her slowly, his expression heavy with sorrow and pride. "You have paid the price," he said softly. "Now the door will open once more, but only for you." His form began to waver, dissolving into threads of smoke and light. She wanted to ask what would become of him, but her words faltered. He smiled faintly, voice fading into the wind. "I am bound to memory. You have set me free." And with that, he was gone. The door appeared once more before her, no longer silver, but pale and translucent, like morning frost. She walked toward it without fear. Behind her, the realm began to fade, its vastness collapsing into quiet, the light receding into itself. She placed her hand upon the handle, now cool to the touch. The air hummed once, low and final, as if the world sighed in relief. Then she stepped through. The forest greeted her with the scent of rain and the first cries of waking birds. She stood alone, the door already gone, and for the first time, her mind was still. She could not remember how she had come there, only that something inside her had been both lost and saved. Morning unfurled slowly, like the world remembering how to breathe. Mist curled through the birch trunks, pale and trembling in the newborn light. She wandered without direction, her feet carrying her along paths that felt familiar yet strange. The door was gone, its silver memory erased from the world and from her mind. Still, something lingered, an ache she could not name, a quiet pulse deep within her chest that whispered of something once lost, once loved. When she reached the forest's edge, she saw her sister waiting there, eyes rimmed red, face pale with sleepless worry. For a moment, they only stared. Strangers who knew they should remember each other. Then Ilara smiled, and the dawn broke fully, spilling gold across their faces. Lyora ran to her, arms wrapping around her as if to keep her from vanishing again. Ilara did not resist. She leaned into the embrace, though her heart felt strangely hollow. "I dreamed you were gone," Lyora whispered, her voice trembling. Ilara smiled faintly, though she could not recall where she had been. "I think I was," she said. They stood there for a long time as the sun rose higher, painting the sky in hues of rose and amber. Somewhere deep in the forest, unseen, the faint sound of creaking wood echoed, as if a door had closed for the last time. Days turned to weeks, and life returned to its quiet rhythm. The cottage filled once more with the scent of herbs and the sound of laughter. But sometimes, in the still hours of night, Ilara would wake and stare at her hands. The faint silver lines that once traced her skin were gone, yet beneath her pulse, she felt something stir, like a forgotten melody. She could not name it, and perhaps she did not need to. The forest beyond their home remained untouched, peaceful. But whenever the moon rose full, its light seemed to fall in strange patterns on the moss, as though outlining something that wasn't there anymore. Far beyond their world, In the space where the realm of longing once glowed, silence reigned. The shards of the broken mirror drifted through nothingness, faintly shimmering with the last light of the sacrifice. From among them a shape began to take form, not of the keeper, but of something freer. His voice, once bound in warning, now whispered across the boundaries of time and dream. "Remember," it said, soft as falling ash, "not the door, but what it cost to close it." And somewhere in the waking world, Elara stirred in her sleep, her lips parting as though to answer words she could no longer recall. On the eve of the next full moon, Elara stood once more at the forest's edge. The mist curled, as it always had, soft and white against the dark earth. Yet there was no pulse in the air, no shimmer, no hum, only the quiet of a world healed. She smiled without knowing why, her heart light. Turning toward home, she whispered something to the trees, words that carried on the wind, though she herself did not understand them. And as she walked away, the forest answered with a single breath of wind, carrying a faint echo through the night. The door remembers.